Hello guys and welcome back to the Lake District. Thank you so much for joining me today. So, conditions are pretty moody today. Bit of lakeland drizzle coming down. Today I'm going to take a shot of an old mill situated in the Borrowdale Valley. It's a truly special location, it really is. Absolutely fantastic from what I've seen of it, not been here myself before. So anyway, in today's video what I thought I'd do is just go through the whole process from taking the image through the editing stage and hopefully make a decent print. Now I think actually conditions are probably quite good for this location because it's not too bright, so that's going to control the highlights and stuff, so I think that's great. Maybe one problem I might have is there's not a huge amount of water coming down this mountain stream here, so nevertheless I'm going to try my best to get an image from this location. So see you a bit further up the trail. So guys, got this one framed up at last. It's took me a little while, about 30 minutes I think, but I just wanted to take my time and make sure I get the best out of this location. And what a location this is, guys. This is proper chocolate box photography. It's yeah, absolutely truly stunning. So like I mentioned before, there isn't a huge amount of water coming down this mountain stream, so I've really not focused too much on the water, really concentrating on the mill there and that beautiful water wheel that's situated there. And I've gone for vertical composition, meaning that I can incorporate some of these boulders, a bit of a water flowing through the image, and I've got a really nice balance to this shot as well, because I've got a big boulder down the left bottom third and the water wheel on the top right third, so I've got a natural balance through the frame, which is super cool, something I'm always looking for. The water itself, there's not, like I said, not a huge amount, but the sort of babbling flow that comes through the foreground here is really nice, and that helps just to lead the eye through the scene. Like I said, vertical framing, and I've just gone a little bit wider than I normally go because I intend to crop this probably 4x5. I don't normally like my vertical shots to be, too narrow. I like them to be a bit 4x5, so that's what we're going to be doing. So I've allowed a little bit of foreground. A few things to think about. There's a little bit of a patch of sky in the very top right hand corner that I just can't seem to eliminate at all, which is a bit of a shame. That being said, I think if I go in tighter I'm going to lose that smoke coming out the chimney, so yeah, somebody's obviously in, and I've got a fire going and the smoke's drifting across the scene, which really adds to the atmosphere and tells the story, which is absolutely amazing. So yeah, on the F11 I'm focusing on that rock, 2 seconds, because I've got a 3-stop filter on, and the polarizer is just helping to saturate the colours, take a bit of glare from the stonework as well. So yeah, without further ado guys, I'm going to go ahead and take this image now. Like I said, 2-second timer. Got a bit of rain coming down as well now, which might add to the atmosphere. And yeah, wow, that looks amazing guys. Let's get this one back to the computer, back to the studio, run an edit on it, and hopefully we can make a print from this absolutely outstanding, beautiful spot here in the Lake District. So, what an absolutely spot on location that is up there in the Borrowdale Valley. Yeah, fantastic little mill with this beautiful beck flowing through the scene. Yeah, would have liked more water actually in this image, but because I kind of honed in on the mill, it wasn't such a big deal. Now, this raw file has come out quite flat, and I think that's to be expected because conditions were quite flat. There wasn't a huge amount of light, and it's very, very early spring, so there's not a lot of foliage. Everything's quite subdued as well, coming out of winter. So yeah, we're going to take a look at this edit and make a print from it as well. And I think we can make something really nice out of this raw file. All the data's there, so we can really pull those fine details and boost that colour as well. One thing I'm going to touch on in this edit is manipulating colour a little bit, because this image is quite a busy scene. There's a lot going on, you know, there's a lot of textures, there's a lot of different colours as well, and I want to simplify the scene a little bit. And I'm going to do that by reducing some of the colours in the scene. So when I first looked at this image, the two colours that really popped out at me were the greens and the magenta or warmer brown tones that we've got in the water wheel and the bracken in the background. And they were the two colours that really jumped out at me. But there's a lot of blue in this image as well. A lot of these rocks, I think maybe there's some slate in there, quite a lot of slate, and that's a bluish colour. Now, if you look at the colour wheel, you'll see that green and magenta sit virtually opposite each other on the colour wheel, which suggests they're complementary colours, so they work well together. However, blue doesn't. That sits, you know, to one side. So having those three colours all together will kind of make the image look busier than it perhaps is if we, you know, pull back on one of those colours. So the obvious colour to pull back on is the blue, because obviously green and magenta complement each other. So that's exactly what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be pulling some of the blue and aquas out of this image and really honing in on the greens and the magentas. We'll be doing that in the hue, saturation and luminance panel. But yeah, let's go over to the edit. I'm going to run through the edit and then we'll take a look at the print as well. So yeah, fantastic location. I keep saying it, but it is. So let's jump over to the computer and run a quick edit on this, and I'll talk you through my thoughts along the way. So here's the raw file. As you can see, like I said, it's very, very flat. It looks very drab and uninteresting, but all of those wonderful colours are there. We just need to extract them from the raw image, and a raw image will always be flatter than perhaps its JPEG counterpart. So we're going to be diving into this and really pulling all of these wonderful tones out of this image. So I'm going to leave my white balance as it is for the time being, and we'll probably come back to that at the end and do a few tweaks to that once I've manipulated some of the other colours in this image. So I'm just going to boost the exposure. As you can see, it just needs a little bit of a boost, doesn't it? So I'm going to bring that up to about plus 0.25. That's good. Contrast needs to be boosted up a little bit, and I'm doing this globally because I think it needs a boost throughout the image. I'm going to push my shadows up to around about plus 10 just to lift those a little bit. Boost my whites just a fraction as well, and add in a ton of saturation. I think maybe let's boost it up to about plus 30 for now and see how that feels. So I'm going to add a little bit of a curve to this, just a very small amount, just a little bit of a lift, not too much, just to help increase some of the colours and the overall contrast in the scenes. So that's a good starting point, I think. As you can see, we've added contrast globally, a bit of saturation, improved the exposure. So I wanted to adjust the crop of this image, like I mentioned in the field. I wanted to try to bring this into more of a 4:5. So that's exactly what I'm going to do here. Just reduce my crop a little bit before we go any further. And actually, the 4:5 allows us to eliminate that little bit of sky at the top there, which I'm really pleased about actually. But I feel by making it 4:5, we lose a bit too much of the flow at the bottom. So I perhaps should have shot this a little bit wider, perhaps. But I'm going to be printing this on A4 paper, so I'm just going to drag that out a little bit to about there, and I think it's probably going to help the composition overall. I think that looks a little bit better. Moving on, so let's dive down into the hue, saturation and luminance panel, where we're going to hopefully bring this image to life. So as we mentioned before, we've got some magentas and greens in this image, but there's also a lot of blue in this image as well. So I want to try to get rid of some of the blue and increase some of the greens, oranges and reds. So I'm going to be working in the saturation first. So I'm going to boost my reds up to about plus 30. Also boost my oranges up to about plus 30, yeah, 32, something like that. My yellows need a little bit of a lift as well, just to try to make this moss pop a little bit. And also my greens, just lift them a little bit as well. So already we can see that the image has been warmed up. The moss really starting to pop out a little bit more now. But to make these pop a little bit more, I think what we can do is reduce the blues and the aquas. So I'm going to drop the aqua down to quite a bit actually. Minus 87 is good. And the blue, similar probably. 83. Now we can start to see this image feel a lot warmer. And we're getting a lot of greys here now as opposed to blues. So you can really see the difference as I move this slider, how that's helping to simplify the composition in terms of the colours. Now I'd like to make these mosses pop out a little bit more, so what I'm going to do is just increase the luminance of those. Not too much, but I'm just going to go for the yellows and greens and just give them a slight lift. You can see if I could take it too far, what an impact that's having on the image. But I'm just gonna boost those just a little bit, and essentially this is accentuating the light that's falling into those areas, which actually was naturally falling into those areas, but the raw file just needed a little bit of a lift, and that's doing that. I think, yeah, we're pretty much there in terms of how the overall composition's and feeling right now. I'm quite happy with that. But I think what it needs is just warming up a little bit. So I'm going to come up to my temperature and I'm just going to warm the whole image up. Now, I'm going to make a few local adjustments to this image as well. And I want to accentuate this area of the water wheel so the eye gets drawn towards it. Because at the minute it's a little bit dark. So I'm just going to use a radial filter. And I'm going to drag that over the side elevation of the building here. Invert my mask there and just increase the contrast, the exposure and this saturation a little bit, just to draw the eye towards that water wheel. I want to bring down the exposure in the sky just a little bit as well, just a little bit with a graduated filter, and again just boost the saturation there a little bit as well. Now I feel that this area here is perhaps a little bit too dark, so I'm going to drop in another radial filter, and this, hopefully by lightening this area up, it's going to allow the viewer to come through this area here and up to the water wheel. So again, I'm going to invert my radial filter and just increase the exposure in this area here. Perhaps angle that up a little bit more so it's pointing up towards the water wheel. Maybe just boost the highlights a little bit. What I did though before I got it ready for print was I did clone out those cables in the top right hand corner. Now I don't tend to do a huge amount of cloning in my photographs, but actually when I took the image over to sharpen it in Photoshop, I looked at those cables there and got the spot removal tool out and just did a little bit of an experiment, and they cloned out really easily. So I did remove the cables because this old mill didn't feel like it had to have electrical cables running through it. It's an old mill. I wanted to try to make it fit in with the period in which it was built. So here we have the final print. I'm really happy with this. This is on Photospeed's natural textured bright white, so a really heavily textured paper, and I think it really suits this old mill. Lots of textures, and yeah, I think it looks really nice. Really happy how it's come out. The ink hasn't quite settled yet. I normally like to leave my prints for a few hours before I properly look into them to let the ink settle, but I think it looks like looks great to me from what I'm seeing here. Hope you guys think the same as well, and I hope you enjoyed the little edit that I did there just to help simplify the composition in terms of the colours. So guys, massive thanks if you made it this far. I really do appreciate it. If you enjoyed the video, please consider sharing this content, as that really helps me out a ton. If you really liked it, hit the thumbs up. Consider subscribing if you haven't done so already. And if you would like to support this channel, please feel free to join the Photographers Clubhouse, which is a community of like-minded folk sharing their ideas and photography. Yeah, so please be sure to check that out if you haven't done so already. Anyway guys, until next week, take care and I'll see you soon.